So this is a quick quiz review over 3.2. Do you remember what we talked about in 3.2? No. So remember, test 2 that's coming up, the one you're getting the review for, is over chapter 3 and 4. Chapter 3, we talked about quadratic formula, completing the square, and all that. Yes? So the first thing is quadratic formula. What is it? X equals negative b plus minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. On your test, the first 3 questions on your review and on your test, you have to use this formula. You have to use this formula. So I'm going to do 2 examples right now of how to do this. So the first one, they give you the problem, f of x equals 3x squared minus 12x minus 7. So this is a good review for your quiz, and also to get you ready so you could refresh your memory to work on your review for the test. Who is my A? 3. Who's your B? Negative 12. And who is your C? Negative 7. So can you please rewrite this formula, plugging in the A, the B, and the C, the 3, the negative 12, and the negative 7, where they belong? This should be a negative 12, that should be a negative 12, that should be a 3, and that should be a negative 7, and that should be a 3. Negative and a negative becomes a positive. Negative 12 squared becomes a positive 144. When I multiply negative 4, positive 3, and a negative 7, I get a positive 84. Mm-hmm. And all this should be divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. So we plug it in. You could just plug this into your calculator if you have it, whether it's graphing or just scientific, without the square root. You just type in those numbers and it will give you an answer. So positive 144, positive 84. When I add those, it gives me 2 what? Or 3, or what is it? 228? 28, what is it? 228. Okay, 228. Now, can you take the square root of 228? No, right? It's not a perfect square root. So if I come here, and this calculator, something wrong with you. There, 228. It's not a perfect square, so I can't do something. But remember, we talked about trying to see if we could break it into 2 numbers. So the first number, 228, that I would try to divide by would be who? Not the 4, because you can take the square root of 4. Can I divide by 4? Yes. Now, please understand, 4 times 57 gives you 228, correct? Do you think 57 can be broken down into anything else? No, it can't. So this comes 4, this becomes 57. The square root of this is the square root of 4 times the square root of 57. What is the square root of 4? 2. So this becomes 2 square root of who? 57. So the square root of 228 becomes 2 square root of 57. It is exactly the same thing. Are we okay with that? So x equals 12 plus minus 2 square root of 57 over 6. Now, if you could reduce, you reduce. If you cannot, then you don't. Now, could this be reduced a little bit more? Yes. All these numbers up in the front are all reducible by what? By 2. What is 12 divided by 2? 6. What is 2 divided by 2? 1. So you don't have to put a number. And what is 6 divided by 2? 3. This is you reducing it. This is an okay answer if you want to. Now, if you would have gone from here and done this, 12 divided by 6 plus minus 2 square root of 57 divided by 6, and simplified them individually. So this is where I have to go and look out for all the possible answers. But if your answer is here, it could still be reduced to this, or what is 12 divided by 6? 2 plus minus, this becomes what? 2 over 6 reduces to? Not 3, but 1/3. This is an okay answer also. Now, if this is all you could do, then you go here. This is the most simplified answer that there is, this one here. You could write them together, or you could write them separately if you want to, whichever way makes you happy. Now, please understand this one thing. If your My Math Lab question says, write down the answer, round to the nearest hundredth, then you have to type it into your calculator. Yes? So for this problem, the square root of 57 close, divide by 3, so I did this part, plus the 2 is a approximation. X equals 4.517, if I had to round, depending on what they tell you. Negative square root of 57. Because of the type of calculator I have to do this part first before the top. But if you have the other better one, it's a negative 0.517. So these are your two answers. So be careful when you're doing the quiz. Now, if you have the graphing calculator, you could just do 2 plus the square, and maybe you could still do it in this one. I just wasn't too sure. Square root of 57 divided by 3. I think it might still give you the answer. Yeah, it does. So depending on what it says, decimal or fraction, you need to be able to use this. Can you bring it? So for the people who have that one. Okay, but don't forget to add this too. So that's why, plus the 2 from the 2 in front. That's why I'm getting the 4.51. Because we forgot. So it's 2 plus square root of 57 divided by 3. And then 2 minus the square root of 57 divided by 3. And there's your two answers that I have right there. Okay. So just type in the entire thing. Alrighty, so are we okay with that? What happened? Let me see. Okay, because it has to be 2 plus, and and then it's just the square root of 57 by itself, because when you type it in, you were putting the 3 inside of the square root also. So if you guys are having a hard time with your calculator, bring it to me, I'll slap some sense into it. All right, number 2, same type of problem, but of course it's gonna look different. And this one has imaginary answers. Do you remember imaginary numbers? Yes, it was imaginary because you ended up with what inside of the square root? A negative. So you have on your test, you're gonna have one of each. One where you end up like this, one with imaginary numbers, and then one that you could actually take the square root of the number. So we're gonna do this problem the best that we could. Let's figure this out. Who's your A, who's your B, and who's your C? 2, 1, 1, right? Plug it into the equation. That becomes A, negative 1 plus minus 1 squared is what? 1. 4 times 2 times 1? Minus 8, very good. And 2 times 2 is 4. What happens when I do 1 minus 8? A negative 7. And can you take the square root of a negative 7? Square root of a negative 7 is like having the square root of a negative 1. And square root of 7, it cannot be broken down anymore. But we said anytime you have the square root of negative 1, it becomes I. So this is going to become negative 1 plus minus. Do y'all like writing the I in the front or in the back? In the back. Okay. Square root of 7, and the I goes outside over 4. You cannot really reduce this answer anymore. This is okay. Or if you want to rewrite it as 2 fractions, 1 over 4, negative 1 over 4, plus minus the square root of 7i over 4. Either way is okay. This one, if you had a question like this on my math lab, it wouldn't ask you to give me a decimal, because you cannot, because of the imaginary number. Yes, sir.
If there's a negative 1, could you make I, like in the beginning, like the first negative 1?
No, because this is the square root of a negative 1. It's not the same thing as a negative 1. Are we okay? So are you alive? Are we alive? Are we alive? Sorry.
No, sorry.
No, I mean, like, are you done? Are you done? Question number 3 might not be on your quiz, but you are going to have something like this on your review. So if I have 2x squared plus 5x minus 3, one more time, do the quadratic formula. But this one, we should get numbers that we could take the square root of, and then we should get simple answers, like crazy ones, I'm hoping. Your A is 2, your B is 5, and your C is a negative 3. I'm going to freeze mine, plug it into the quadratic formula. If you do good on that quiz, half of your test is on that quiz right there. It's on this review also that we're doing right now. You get a pretty number that you can take the square root of. No? Yes? Mm-mm. So don't forget, this is a minus and this is a -3, so there's a plus right there. So it's 25 plus 24.
I did it down because I thought I heard you say -5 plus 3.
Oh, sorry.
And that's what I wrote down.
At least, maybe I did say that, I'm so sorry. Okay, so it becomes a positive, we get a 49. What's the square root of 49? So -5 plus minus 7 over 4. Now, the biggest thing that I see when you're doing your work, even though you take the square root of 49, some of you still want to put the square root around the 7. Once you take the square root, that square root is gone. Forget about it. So this is -5 plus 7 divided by 4, and -5 minus 7 divided by 4. So please understand, when there is something that you can take the square root of, you come up with pretty answers. Maybe there'll be fractions, but not crazy fractions. What is -5 plus 7? 2 over 4 becomes a 1 over 2. X is 1/2. There's one answer. What is -5 and a -7? -12 over 4 becomes a -3. There's your other answers. So these are the 3 possible sort of answers that you could get. Some that stay with the square root because you can't do anything. Some with imaginary numbers, and some that you get pretty answers like this. Are we okay? Questions? All right, we're 3 questions from finishing. And this is what we covered today. So if you get y equals x minus 5 over x plus 8, we're looking for the vertical isotope, horizontal isotope, and the domain. All 3 things. Okay, and there's probably going to be 2 more things I need to do. So for your vertical isotope, because we covered that, which part am I looking at? The bottom. So I set it equal to 0, and I get x equals -8. This is your vertical isotope right away. That is it. Does this help me determine the domain? Yes. So the domain here and set filter notation would be x is what? Just not equal to that -8. Or if I had to write it in the other one, it would be -infinity to a -8, union -8 to infinity. So we already answered this part and this part. To find the horizontal, what am I supposed to do? Look at your who? Degrees, right? And what is your degree of the top one? There's a 1 here, and what's the degree here? 1. So they are what? Equal. The degrees are equal in both your numerator and denominator. So the formula says it is your leading coefficient over your leading coefficient. Well, who are my numbers in the front? 1 over 1. The coefficients of your x. 1 over 1, so which is a 1. So this is your answer for your horizontal isotope. Now, they may ask for an x-intercept. X-intercept. So if they ask for the x-intercept, you have to look at your numerator, set it equal to 0, and solve. That's all you have to do. So who is your numerator? Minus 5. So x is a 5. So my x-intercept is 5, 0. So this is just something new of how you find your numerator from a rational function, but the work is easy. It's nothing crazy. So take your numerator, set it equal to 0. That is your x-intercept. That is your 0. Now, how do you find your y-intercept?
So it's not negative than 0.
No.
No.
Let x equal 0 everywhere. Let x be 0 everywhere in the function. So we're coming from here. Y equals 0 minus 5 over 0 plus 8. So what's my answer? Negative 5 over 8. So my problem is 0, negative 5/8. This here is your y-intercept. And the last two problems are very similar to what we did at the very end yesterday, on Monday, which is factor completely. Remember that? Synthetic division? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, so once we're good with this, we could do those two problems, or one, it's up to you. One is good. All right. So let's look at this. This is what, number 5? Factor completely. The problem they give you is f of x equals x cubed plus 9x squared plus 23x plus 15. Now remember, who determines which are the numbers that I could use? The very end, right? Who are my factors of 15? Plus minus 1, plus minus 3, plus minus 5, or a plus minus 15. So using synthetic division, we start playing around with numbers and like, oh, let's try a 5, let's try a 3, a negative 3, a 1, a negative 1, whatever you want to try. As long as you find 1 when it's a cubic, then you should be able to find the other one by doing the little table. So for this one, who are the numbers that are going to be inside of my little thing over here? 1, 9, 23, and a positive 15, right? All positives, they were all pluses. Now, this is just trial and error. What number should you want to try? If you have the answer, don't tell me. I want for us to get one wrong.
3.
Let's use a 3. 3 works because 3 will be wrong.
Oh. That's not what I was going for.
Okay, I know. So we try a 3, synthetic division. You bring down your first one. What's 3 times 1? 3. 9 plus 3 is 12. 3 times 12 is 36. 36 plus 23 is 59. And is that going to end up canceling? It's not going to be a 0, so I could already tell you. And let me just finish it because I had a lot, but we were not here yesterday. Times 3 is 177 plus 15 is 192. If this is not 0, then this is not an answer. So 1, 9, 23, and 15. What number goes outside? Give me one that works.
-1, maybe.
A -1 maybe? Okay, a -1 will work. You're right. So we're going to try a -1. We bring down the first one. What's -1 times 1? -1. 9 minus 1? 8. 8 times a -1? -8. 23 minus 8. Is it 15? And 15 times a -1? negative 15, and 15 minus 15, 0. Perfect. So that tells me this is a 0, but which is the factor that gives me that 0? X plus 1. X plus 1 is your factor, negative 1 is your 0. So from this part, if you don't have a calculator, your answer should be x plus 1. Please remember, this is your remainder, your constant, your x, and your x squared. So this is x squared plus 8x plus 15. But the instruction says factor out completely. If you look at this, two numbers that multiply to 15 and add up to 8 are what and what? 3 and 5. Somebody goes 3 and 5. And 3 plus 5 is what? 8. So this stays as x plus 1. This becomes x plus 3. And this becomes x plus 5. You have factored it out completely. This is it. Who are the zeros? Negative 1. This is going to become a what? Negative 3. And this is going to become a negative 5. Factored out completely, and these are your zeros. Are we okay? So as soon as you find one, now, if you would have chosen 1 and they wouldn't, then you keep trying until one of them gives you a 0. Once one of them gives you a 0, then you write this out and it should be something that you should be able to factor. So this is part of what we covered on Monday. This is no bueno.